Once upon a time, in a big city, there lived a very rich man named Mr. Johnson. He had a beautiful daughter named Lily. Lily had everything she wanted: toys, clothes, and a big house. Mr. Johnson had a driver named Tom. Tom was kind and always did his job well. He had a little daughter named Emma, who was Lily's age. Sometimes, Tom would bring Emma to play with Lily. One day, Lily got upset because her father didn't buy her a new toy she wanted. She felt angry and wanted to get attention. She thought of a plan. She told her father that Tom had hurt her. Mr. Johnson was shocked and very angry. He trusted his daughter and believed her words. Without asking Tom what happened, he called the police. Tom was arrested and taken away. Emma cried and didn't understand why her father was gone. Tom was put in jail for 3 years. Life in jail was hard and lonely. He missed Emma every day. Emma had to live with her aunt, who was kind but couldn't replace her father. Lily, on the other hand, felt guilty but was too scared to tell the truth. 3 years passed, and Tom was released from jail. He had lost his job, his home, and many friends. People looked at him differently because they thought he was a bad person. Tom felt angry and wanted to make things right. He decided to find out why Lily had lied. Tom started working as a taxi driver to earn money. One day, he saw Lily walking alone. He followed her quietly to see where she was going. Lily went to a park and sat on a bench, looking sad. Tom approached her and said, "Hello, Lily. Do you remember me?" Lily looked up and recognized Tom. She felt scared and guilty. "Yes, I remember you," she said softly. "Why did you lie about me?" Tom asked gently. Tears filled Lily's eyes. "I was angry at my dad and wanted attention. I didn't think it would hurt you so much. I'm so sorry." Tom took a deep breath. He had waited years to hear this. "Your lie changed my life. I lost everything. But I want to forgive you if you help me clear my name." Lily nodded. "I'll tell my dad the truth. I promise." That evening, Lily told her father everything. Mr. Johnson was shocked and felt terrible for what had happened to Tom. He apologized to Tom and offered him his job back. Tom accepted the apology but decided to start a new life elsewhere with Emma. Tom and Emma moved to a small town, where no one knew their past. They started fresh, and Tom opened a small shop. Emma made new friends and was happy again. Lily learned a valuable lesson about honesty and the consequences of her actions. She and Tom stayed in touch, and over time, they all healed from the past. Life in the small town was peaceful for Tom and Emma. Tom worked hard in his little shop, selling groceries and small household items. Emma was happy at her new school, and she made friends who didn't judge her for her father's past. But deep inside, Tom still carried the pain of those 3 lost years. Meanwhile, in the big city, Lily struggled with guilt. Even though she had told the truth, she still felt ashamed of what she had done. People whispered about her behind her back. Some friends stopped talking to her. She wanted to fix everything, but she didn't know how. One evening, Mr. Johnson sat Lily down. "I've been thinking," he said. "Tom lost 3 years of his life because of us. We must do something to help him." Lily nodded. "But how?" Mr. Johnson smiled. "I have an idea." A few days later, Tom received a letter from a lawyer. He was surprised and a little scared. He opened it and read, "Dear Tom, I owe you more than just an apology. I have transferred a large sum of money into an account for you. I hope this helps you and Emma start a new life. I will never forgive myself for what I did. Please accept this as a small way to make things right. Lily." Tom stared at the letter. He wasn't sure how to feel. Money could never give him back those lost years. But it could help Emma have a better future. He decided to accept it, not for himself, but for his daughter. Things started to change. Tom expanded his small shop into a bigger one. He hired workers and started earning more money. Emma got everything she needed: new clothes, books, and even piano lessons, something she had always wanted. For a while, it seemed like life was finally getting better. But deep in Tom's heart, he still carried anger. He tried to let go of it, but the pain of betrayal didn't disappear easily. One day, an unexpected visitor came to his shop. Tom was arranging shelves when he heard the doorbell ring. He turned around and froze. It was Lily. "I had to see you," she said softly. "I need to know, can you ever forgive me?" Tom looked at her for a long time. The memories of prison, the whispers, the shame, all of it came rushing back. He clenched his fist. Part of him wanted to scream at her. Part of him wanted to turn away. But then he thought of Emma. If he held on to his anger forever, how could he teach his daughter about kindness? With a deep breath, Tom said, "I don't know if I can ever forget. But I will try to forgive." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. It wasn't an ending. But maybe, just maybe, it was a new beginning. Tom stood there, staring at Lily, his mind racing with memories of the past. The cold prison walls, the nights he cried himself to sleep, the days he sat alone, wondering if he would ever see his daughter again. Now, the person responsible for all of it stood before him, looking remorseful, her hands shaking. Lily's voice trembled. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I ruined your life. But I had to come. I had to try." Tom's jaw tightened. "Do you have any idea what those years were like for me?" Lily looked down. "No. I don't. But I want to understand." Tom exhaled sharply. He looked out the window, watching the cars pass by on the street. His shop, once a tiny store, had grown into something successful. He had built a new life, but the scars of the past remained. "I lost everything, Lily," Tom finally said. "I lost my job, my dignity, my friends. My own daughter had to live without me. She cried herself to sleep every night. I was treated like a monster for something I didn't do." His voice broke. "And all because of a lie." Lily wiped her tears. "I've spent the last 3 years trying to live with that guilt. You don't have to forgive me, Tom. I just needed to tell you in person that I'm sorry." For a long time, there was silence between them. The air was thick with emotion. Then, the door creaked open. Emma walked in. She had grown into a beautiful young girl, her bright eyes filled with curiosity. She froze when she saw Lily. "Dad, who's this?" Tom looked at his daughter. For years, he had let his pain control him. But seeing Emma reminded him of something. He had to be strong for her. If he allowed hatred to consume him, what kind of father would he be? He turned back to Lily. "I don't know if I can ever forget what happened. But I'll try to forgive. Not for you, but for me and for Emma." Lily let out a shaky breath, a small smile forming on her lips. "Thank you, Tom." As she turned to leave, she hesitated. "Maybe one day, we can be friends again." Tom didn't answer immediately. Then, after a moment, he gave her a small nod. Lily smiled, wiped her tears, and walked out the door. Tom watched her go, feeling lighter than he had in years. Maybe forgiveness didn't happen overnight. Maybe it took time. But at that moment, he realized something: he was free. Free from the past. Free from anger. And for the first time in years, he was truly at peace. Tom watched Lily walk away, but something in his gut told him this wasn't over. He had lived in pain for years, and now, Just like that, she wanted forgiveness. It didn't sit right with him. That night, Tom sat alone in his small living room, staring at the ceiling. His mind replayed the moment he was arrested, the cold steel of the handcuffs, the way Mr. Johnson had looked at him with disgust, the helplessness he had felt as Emma screamed for him. His fist clenched. A knock at the door startled him. It was past midnight. Who could it be? Tom opened the door and found an envelope on the ground. He looked around, but the street was empty. He bent down, picked it up, and unfolded the letter inside. You were never supposed to get out. Be careful who you trust. Tom's heart pounded. His hands tightened around the letter. What did this mean? Who sent it? He looked around once more, then quickly shut the door. His mind raced. He had thought his nightmare was over. But now, it seemed like someone still wanted to destroy him. The next morning, Tom decided to find out the truth. He had been too quick to believe that Lily was the only one responsible. But what if there was more to the story? He started by visiting the place he hadn't dared to return to, the Johnson estate. When he arrived, the guards at the gate looked surprised. What are you doing here? One of them asked. I need to see Mr. Johnson, Tom said firmly. After a moment of hesitation, the guard made a call. Minutes later, the gates opened. Tom stepped inside, feeling his heart race as memories flooded back. Inside, Mr. Johnson sat in his large study, looking older and more tired than Tom remembered. Tom, he said, standing up. I didn't expect to see you. Tom placed the mysterious letter on the desk. Someone sent this to me last night. Mr. Johnson's face darkened as he read the note. He sat down slowly, rubbing his temples. There's something I never told you, he finally said. Tom leaned in, his pulse quickening. What? Mr. Johnson sighed. I believed Lily back then because someone convinced me she was telling the truth. Tom's blood ran cold. Who? Mr. Johnson hesitated, then spoke a name that sent a chill down Tom's spine. My wife. Tom's breath caught. He had barely interacted with Mrs. Johnson when he worked for them. She was always cold, distant. But why would she frame him? She wanted you gone, Mr. Johnson admitted. She said you were a bad influence on Lily, that you were dangerous. I didn't question it. I thought I was protecting my daughter. Tom's hands trembled. 3 years of his life stolen, because of a lie. And now, someone still wanted to silence him. Tom looked Mr. Johnson in the eyes. Where is she now? Mr. Johnson hesitated. She left after the truth came out. But he looked at the letter again. If someone sent this, it means she might still be watching. Tom's heart pounded. He had thought the worst was over. But now, he knew, this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Tom felt his chest tighten. Mrs. Johnson had always been quiet, elegant, and calculating. He had never once suspected that she might be the mastermind behind his downfall. She wanted me gone, Tom whispered. But why? Mr. Johnson leaned back in his chair, his face heavy with regret. Because she knew you were too close to the truth. Tom frowned. What truth? Mr. Johnson hesitated. Then, after a deep breath, he said, Lily was never supposed to tell anyone the truth. My wife made sure of that. But when the story unraveled, she disappeared. I thought she was gone for good. Now, I'm not so sure. Tom clenched his fist. If Mrs. Johnson was behind this, then she was still a threat. But how far would she go to keep her secrets buried? That night, Tom barely slept. Every sound outside his window made his heart race. He knew one thing for sure, he wasn't safe. Neither was Emma. Early the next morning, he decided to visit Lily. She had tried to make things right, but what if she knew more than she had admitted? Tom arrived at the cafe where she worked part-time. She looked up, surprised to see him. "Tom," she asked. "What's wrong?" He placed the letter in front of her. She read it, her hands shaking. I don't understand," she stammered. "Did your mother ever say anything before she left?" Tom pressed. Lily swallowed hard. "She told me never to contact her again. That she had to disappear for a while." Tom exhaled. "She's still watching." Lily looked scared. "What do we do?" Before Tom could answer, his phone buzzed. He checked the message. "You should have stayed quiet." A cold chill ran down his spine. Someone was close. "We need to leave," he said urgently. Lily grabbed her bag, and they rushed outside. But the moment they stepped onto the street, a black car screeched to a stop in front of them. The back door opened. Mrs. Johnson sat inside, dressed in all black, her face calm but her eyes cold. "Get in," she said. Tom hesitated. He could run, but he knew she wouldn't stop haunting him. With a deep breath, he climbed in. Lily followed, her hands shaking. The doors shut. The car sped off. Mrs. Johnson sighed. "You were supposed to disappear, Tom." Tom glared at her. "You ruined my life. You made your own daughter live with guilt." "Why?" She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Because you were in the way." Tom frowned. "In the way of what?" She leaned forward. "My plans." Tom felt his stomach twist. "You mean framing me?" She chuckled. "That was just a part of it. My real goal was to get rid of you so that I could control everything, Lily's life, my husband's fortune, and our family's reputation." She tilted her head. "But you got out. And now, I have to clean up the mess." Tom's pulse quickened. "So you're going to kill me?" Mrs. Johnson smirked. "Oh, Tom. You make it sound so dramatic." The car turned onto an abandoned road. Lily spoke up, her voice shaking. "Mom, stop this. Please." Mrs. Johnson didn't even look at her. "You were always weak, Lily." Tom knew he had to act fast. He glanced at the driver. A large man, built like a bodyguard. No easy way out. Then he saw it. The handle of the door. The car slowed as they approached an old warehouse. Tom didn't wait. In one swift motion, he yanked the door handle and shoved it open. "Run," he yelled at Lily. She screamed as he grabbed her wrist and pulled her out of the moving car. They hit the ground hard, rolling onto the dirt road. Tom groaned in pain but pulled himself up. He grabbed Lily's hand and sprinted toward the trees nearby. Behind them, the car screeched to a stop. "Get them!" Mrs. Johnson's voice rang out. Footsteps thundered behind them. Tom ran faster, his heart pounding. Lily gasped for air, struggling to keep up. A gunshot rang out. A bullet whizzed past them, hitting a tree. Tom's mind raced. They couldn't keep running forever. Then he saw it, a small, abandoned cabin in the distance. Inside, he shouted. They burst through the door and slammed it shut. Tom grabbed an old wooden beam and wedged it against the handle. Heavy footsteps approached. Mrs. Johnson's voice called out, taunting. "Tom, you can't run forever." Tom scanned the room. Nothing useful. Just dust, broken furniture, and... His eyes landed on an old metal pipe. He grabbed it, tightening his grip. The door burst open. Mrs. Johnson's bodyguard stepped in, but Tom swung the pipe hard, hitting him across the head. The man crumpled to the floor. Mrs. Johnson stood behind him, holding a gun. Lily gasped. Mom, don't. Mrs. Johnson's hands trembled. You should have just stayed gone, Tom. Sirens wailed in the distance. She turned, eyes widening. Tom saw his chance. He lunged, knocking the gun from her hand. It skidded across the floor. Mrs. Johnson screamed as Tom pinned her down. Seconds later, police officers swarmed in. Freeze, they shouted. Tom let out a shaky breath and stepped back as officers pulled Mrs. Johnson to her feet, handcuffing her. Lily sobbed. Mom. Mrs. Johnson looked at her daughter, her face filled with something Tom couldn't quite read: anger, regret, fear. As she was dragged away, she whispered, "It's not over." But for Tom, it was. After 3 years of pain, betrayal, and fear, he was finally free. 2 weeks later, Tom sat outside his shop, watching Emma play. Lily sat beside him, sipping tea. "What now?" she asked. Tom smiled, breathing in the fresh air. "We move forward." And for the first time in years, he truly believed it. The nightmare was over. And a new life had begun.